Hi, my name's Rachel, and today I have a very special video for you. If for some reason you are new here, I am a book reviewer and a parent of a couple of public schools kids, and I've been fighting against book censorship in my home state and in my home county of Hillsborough County, where Tampa is, here in Florida. I've been making anti-censorship content about books since 2021. Recently, I've been inviting folks to come over on my channel to join me in the fight against censorship as a community. Today, I have invited a bunch of authors on to talk about banned books and book censorship, despite my governor here in Florida trying to convince everyone and their mothers that book banning is a hoax. Book banning is not a hoax. Now the federal government has adopted that stance, but it is not a hoax, and book censorship continues to be on the rise. Some of your favorite books might be being targeted, books about your lived experience or the lived experience of your loved ones. These books are being deemed unworthy for public consumption. This includes a variety of stories and across age ranges, so everything from children's picture books to middle grade to young adult to adult books. And you'll hear about these books today from people who write books. I previously invited reviewers on to talk about their favorite banned books, and now I've asked authors to come on and join me in that discussion. But before we begin, I want to start by giving a rundown about what book banning actually is so that we can all be on the same page. It's important to actually understand book censorship in the context of the United States right now before you form an opinion on it. So past Rachel, me from another video, is going to come on and explain that to you real quick before the authors chime in, but if you've already heard me give this spiel before, you can skip to this timestamp to hear the authors talk about their favorite banned books. Book banning does not mean a book is made completely unavailable. That is a very minimalistic way to define a broad spectrum of actions that are all rooted in the desire to control others. Book censorship, as I said, is a spectrum of actions. It has never been defined in such a minimal way by any reputable organization or group of people. No one who is being honest about this problem would say that the only bans are federal bans. People challenge books at a local level first. A book challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based on the objections of a person or group. This is always the first step towards a goal of censorship. You challenge at a local place first, a local public library, a local school. Then they try to work their way up from a local institution to the broader piece of that institution, the entire public library system in a county or the entire public school library system in a county. Then they want to work up to the state level, and then they want to work up to the federal level. We are now seeing the beginnings of federal bans, with the federal government banning books from Department of Defense education activity, schools which are schools for military members' children on military bases, which are federally run. This is a stepping stone towards more federal restrictions, just like the local bans were a stepping stone towards this DODEA measure. Censorship is never an isolated incident. It is always part of a larger pattern, and that pattern starts with a challenge. They are typically done by a formal form provided by a school or a library or a district, and here are some examples of challenge forms for children's picture books, young adult books, and middle grade books. A person fills out these forms in the hope to censor the material. Sometimes the outcome is a book is banned from one school library, or it is moved from a middle school library into a high school library, which was the case for this book about Palestinian youth voices in a middle school in New York, which was deemed unfit for the middle school. Somehow, despite the fact that it interviews 8 and 12-year-old children, it was moved to a high school. This is one form of censorship, deeming age-appropriate things as inappropriate and making them inaccessible for their intended audience. But it will not end there. Eventually they will deem it inappropriate for the high school as well. Sometimes a book is banned just in the middle schools in a district. Sometimes a book is banned throughout the entire district. These are all different types of censorship. Book banning is defined by the First Amendment Society, and Encyclopedia Britannica agrees as book banning, a form of censorship that occurs when private individuals or government officials or organizations remove books from libraries or school reading lists or bookstore shelves because they object to their content, ideas, or themes. It does not have to be all of those places. The key word there is or. If you ban a book from one place, you have banned that book in that place. A ban is a ban is a ban. If you understand how a dry county works, then you understand book banning on a local level. It is not enough to just Google the word ban. Book banning has its own context, just like alcohol bans have their own context. To leave out that context is to lie about the state of affairs as far as censorship in the United States. Now, you might say, why did you bring people on who talked about books that have only so far been challenged and not actually banned from anywhere? Why not only allow people to talk about successful bans? Because failed challenges are still attempts at bans. they are still attempts at censorship. And they speak to a broader issue of civilians, sometimes in groups such as Moms for Liberty, attempting to install themselves as the arbiter of moral versus immoral for the rest of the population. They also are very revealing when you read the challenge forums, which I encourage you to do so, because you will learn that yes, people are trying to get books banned because they don't like queer folks and people of color. Their challenges reveal exactly who they are and what their ultimate goal is. And just because a challenge fails does not mean that that intent and that mindset is not there. It doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be pushed back against. You should pay attention when other people reveal themselves to be attempting to prevent your children or yourself from accessing information and media. Personally, I want to know when people are trying to enact their will upon my kids, even when they fail. Those failed challenges speak to blatant bigotry and show what their actual intention is. And I want to protect myself and my kids and others from those people and those ideologies. Similarly, even when proposed bills that are horrifying fail, it is not just a victory simply because, oh, it failed. Whoever brought that bill forth still believes that they should have that control over you and others, and they will try again. And I want to know about them. You should want to know about them so that you know who is in positions of power, what are they trying to achieve, and how can you protect yourself and others. What you will see is that bigots are birds of a feather. They flock together. They are like a virus. They take each other's bigotry and they spread it. So while measures might fail in one county or in one state, their friends in positions of power in other counties and other states will copy their homework and enact laws for your friends outside of your state. And as we have learned time and time again, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We must first know about this problem in order to combat it, and we only can combat it in community with each other. All right, let's hear from some authors about their favorite banned books.
Hi, I'm Liselle Sambury. I'm the author of Blood Like Magic, Delicious Monsters, and other books for teens. And my favorite banned book that I want to talk about is The Bells by Donnell Clayton, which has unfortunately been banned in 2 schools in Florida. The Bells follows Camellia Beauregard, who is a belle, which means her job is to make people beautiful in a world filled with gray. In this entire world, beauty is a commodity, and she has always felt that this was a good thing. And when she kind of becomes the favorite of the queen, she starts to learn that there is a dark side to the world that she lives in. This was the book that made me believe that there was space for me in publishing. I always wanted to be an author, but when I saw this book by a Black author featuring a Black girl in a fantasy world thriving, it made me finally believe that there could be space for me in the traditional publishing industry. And I feel that this should stay on shelves, not only because it is a mirror for other Black kids to see themselves, it is a door for other kids who aren't Black to see that this is a possibility. There is not a default for a hero in a fantasy world, and also for Black kids out there who are wanting to become writers, wanting to create their own fantasy world, wanting to put that out into the world, to know that it's possible for them. Because the thing is, when you don't see yourself represented, it is difficult to believe that you can belong in those spaces where you aren't being represented. And kids deserve to be able to see themselves in that way.
Hi, my name is Neka Marie. I'm the author of The Inevitability of, but we're not here to talk about my adult contemporary fantasy set in a small town with magic and family politicking and multicultural magic. No, we're here to talk about banned and challenged books. Originally published in 2004, which is when I read it as a child, this book has been banned from school libraries since 2009. It became the most banned and challenged book of the 2022 to 2023 school year. That's crazy. Reasons that people cited to ban this book. Depictions of drug use, sexual themes, and adult language. The book Crank is loosely really related to Ellen Hopkins' own daughter's struggle with addiction. The whole point of the book is that addiction to anything can happen to anybody. And quite frankly, I think that's an important message for everybody to know as we get out of this notion that addiction only happens to bad people, and we start understanding that addiction is a disease. I believe this book fully encapsulates that. But let's keep going. Starting in Rockwell Independent School District in Texas, from high school library in Michigan, after a parent claimed the book had pornographic content. Let's keep going. In Utah, Crank was banned from school libraries under Utah Law HB 29. So again, just to reiterate, in 2024, I was 13. This book is based loosely around the real-life addiction of Ellen Hopkins's teenage daughter. The main character in this book just entered middle school. I read it at the exact right time, and I think that it's pertinent for other people to read it at the exact right time. Drugs don't wait for you to be 18. Drugs are there when you're there. But when you're surrounded by drug use and you're a child, you're extremely malleable. So maybe you want to know or see depictions of how bad it can get for you, so you don't join in. Anywho, thank you so much, Rachel, for having me be a part of this project. I do think that people need to read Crank. Absolutely understand if you feel like it's a tough book to get through. It was for me too at 14. But you know what I'm not addicted to? Crank. Bye!
Hi, I'm DM Bryn. I am a queer, trans, disabled author, and I write these Treacherous Tide series and the Guides for Dating Vampire series. One of my favorite banned books is Clap When You Land, which is a beautiful, emotional story of grief and family. It was temporarily banned in classrooms in Pennsylvania, where they also banned one of my favorite nonfiction books, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and permanently banned in schools in the District of Utah. The idea of removing this book from the kids who need it feels like a kind of cruelty. It's a story that portrays the emotional realities of losing a parent you love dearly, and also realizing that parent wasn't the person you thought they were, whether in the massive, life-altering way of the story, or the smaller daily realities of growing up to understand that the people who raised you are complicated, and that makes your life and your love for them complicated too. This story is one that most kids will be able to relate to, and through it, they can also find hope in the fact that there's still family, community, and belonging beyond that loss and confusion. It's the kind of story I could have used as a teen who just realized they were queer, and felt like they were suddenly losing the parents that before that they had only loved and respected. We need more books like this, not less.
Hello, my name is Dartanyan Johnson, and I'm the author of the ongoing space opera series, The Crystal of Life, as well as the fantasy Ashes and Rubble. My love for reading started when I was around 6 years old. My mother bought me a book titled The Story About Ping, and it came with an audio cassette, so I could listen to it as I was reading it. In the second grade, my teacher read Charlotte's Web to the class. I was so in love with the story that I went to the school library and checked it out so I could read it. As an adult, I discovered that book had been banned in a handful of schools, and I couldn't figure out why, so I looked it up. Some parents didn't like the fact that the animals spoke. Talking is reserved for humans only. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, you're entitled to your belief. Now, if you don't want your children reading books where animals talk, then you don't allow your children to read those books. But it's not for you to police other people's children and take away the things that they love. Charlotte's Web is about friendship. It's about being yourself and how to be your best self. So when someone's advocating the banishment of this book, it feels like they're doing so because they don't value friendships with people who are different. You don't respect other people's beliefs and cultures. You only want us to see life the same way you see it, which sounds a lot like white supremacy. Which brings me to the Hunger Games. Hold on. Let me get a little closer for this. Now, when I first heard Hunger Games were being banned in different countries, I understood why. And it wasn't the violence, that was just an excuse. The real reason is, have you read The Hunger Games? There was a rebellion. The people failed. Every year, a boy and a girl from each district must battle in a tournament, and there can only be one winner. Now imagine the districts were minority. Imagine the tournament was life. Now the game is rigged, and as long as you're fighting each other, you're not fighting the system. The powers that be, they don't want the districts to unite, because if they unite and topple the government, then they topple the system, and there is no more white supremacy, which is probably why the people who are so loud about banning these books look a lot like the enemy.
Hi, I'm Nora Murad, and I'm author of the award-winning young adult novel Ida in the Middle, about a Palestinian American girl. I am going to give a shout out to, first of all the books about Palestine or by Palestinians for kids that are being challenged or soft-censored, or where the authors or supporters of Palestinians are being silenced by having their author visits canceled. And more specifically, to choose one book, I'd like to talk about Ahid Tamimi and Dina Takruri's amazing book, They Called Me a Lioness. And I love this book along with others, because this is a Palestinian teenage girl telling her own story for the benefit of other teenagers. And I think what a gift it is, what a special gift for teenagers in the United States to be able to learn and hear directly from a Palestinian age mate about their own experience growing up and living under Israeli occupation.
The sharp rise in book bans.
Books have been banned in the U.S.
The growing list of books banned in our nation's classrooms and libraries.
Let's talk about book banning. Hi, I'm Akana Phenix, and I'm the author of the Hunger Games-inspired young adult novel, The Empire Wars. By now, many of you have seen this clip.
That's what they want. They don't want the garbage, and the idea that that's even in there is inappropriate for these young kids, but they are using your tax dollars to put that in. How is that an appropriate use of taxpayer
Here's what
dollars?
the experts on the opposite side of the book banning issue had to say. For example, Dr. Karen Tao of the University of Utah.
Vitriol and the language that's used behind some of these book bans and legislation. So what kids are hearing is that books that are written about me are bad. Books that talk about my story are not okay. And so in essence, you're banning me.
Now let's take a look at the most commonly banned books of the early 2020s thus far. Nearly all of them are written by minorities, whether they were women, LGBTQ authors, or authors of color. In fact, according to PEN America, some of the most commonly banned subject material is LGBTQ content, characters of color, and women's experiences. Additionally, 56% of all book bans are young adult novels. In 2021, Clay County, Florida challenged the book Iron Widow, written by Chinese author Xiran Jie Zhao, that depicts the first woman emperor of China and includes feminist themes and anti-oppression symbolism. This is my favorite challenge book because it perfectly ties into educative history, imaginative fantasy, and women's empowerment. This is a book I wish I'd had coming of age. Reading through the eyes of Setian, the experiences she suffers and overcomes is both inspiring and relatable as a human experience. As the landscape of young adult books change and move with the flow, it's up to us to exercise our First Amendment right to free speech and stand firm in supporting authors of color.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Coon, and I am the author of Grave Maidens and War Maidens, and I am also the author of Take Up Space, Y'all, Your Bold and Bright Guide to Self-Love, which I co-wrote with Tess Holliday. I am also the author of ACT Strategy Smart and ACACT. Book that I wanted to talk about today is called I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. This was written by Erica L. Sanchez, and it is currently one of the books that are banned in Florida, in Volusia County. One of the reasons, well, several of the reasons that it's banned. It talks about depression, it talks about self-harm, it also goes into representation from an immigrant family's perspective. It references abuse, grief, mental health, and family struggles. Those are the reasons that it was banned. Florida, as you might well know, has become one of the states that really leads the charge in banning books. Personally, as an author, I've read this book, I obviously own it, and I love it. I gave it to my kids to read, and they actually loved it. It was shocking to me when I went looking for books that were banned to kind of talk about this today. It was shocking that this book was on the list. It's actually shocking that any book is on a banned list, let's be honest. But the fact that this one is on the list makes zero sense. Here's why I think it should not be banned. I don't think any book should be banned, but especially this one. Representation matters. Number one, every kid deserves to see themselves in stories. The fact that this talks about a Mexican immigrant's experience in Florida is something that I think is super relevant. Number two, mental health matters for kids, and being able to thoughtfully discuss from a young adult perspective themes of grief and depression and even thoughts of self-harm, especially when done in a nuanced way, is so important. Kids are going through that stuff. When we talk about it from like an adult perspective and we put our spin on it, it's not as effective as when you see it through a child's eyes. And that's exactly what happens in this story. It's already age appropriate. Number three, as an author, I can tell you that these books go through a million different edits. This book was edited heavily, and it 100% focuses on a child's point of view, discussing mental health. There is nothing inappropriate about it. It's not gruesome. It's not to the point where it would cause a kid to actually think about harming themselves. It might cause a kid thinking about harming themselves to rethink that, because it gives you some of the perspectives on what happens when grief gets out of hand. So it really encourages, I don't know what number I'm on, 4 or 5. It encourages critical thinking and discussion. It helps students think about life's complexities and struggles. And it's a way for teachers and parents to talk to their kids about something that they, a lot of students might go through. That is my take on why I think this book is actually a spectacular read and why I think it should not be banned along with any book. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is A.B. Daniels-Annachi. I wrote the dark fantasy novel A Tide of Treason, which discusses the effects of colonialism on the environment while following a trans pirate mermaid as their fates are entwined while they follow their own quests. This is really great for readers that loved The Jasmine Throne and Skin of the Sea, and it has a lot of queer and Indian or South Asian representation. I'm really excited to talk about my favorite banned book today. It was actually really hard to narrow it down to one, and I settled on my favorite not because I love reading it, but because I keep coming back to it. As soon as I finish reading it, I almost immediately want to start it over again. Mine is 1984 by George Orwell. And this is a book that I had to read in high school. I just recently reread it again and then immediately started it over. I have it in paperback, ebook, audiobook, and I almost have it on a constant stream. This book is not currently banned anywhere. It's not actively banned, but it is constantly challenged. It's been challenged in Florida for being pro-communist, which ironically is the opposite reason why it was banned in the Soviet Union until 1988. It was banned for being anti-communist. It was also banned in Cuba until 2015. People tend to generally not like this book, and I fully understand why. It is not fun to read. It is vile. It deals with very graphic discussions of sexual assault. It deals with really, really uncomfortable discussions of the government. There's a lot of violence in it. But 1984 illustrates how important individual thought is. It follows a main character who is honestly kind of terrified of his own thoughts because there's something called the thought police, and he's scared he's going to get in trouble. It demonstrates how a government can become totalitarian and manipulate media, propaganda, and survey citizens far too easily. This is really a highly relevant book now, and it was relevant when it was It shines a light on how relevant discussions of political power are, and Orwell specifically, I think, has had the right idea writing this book. Orwell specifically had a really unique experience that made him especially qualified to write this book, and that is the fact that he was born in India underneath the British rule. He wasn't Indian, but his father was a part of the British Army. He experienced firsthand an authoritarian government. Overall, this book is just kind of everything that could be wrong with government. It's everything that our government is doing wrong, if I can say that. I don't know. 10 out of 10, highly recommend reading this book. It's going to make you uncomfortable, but it's the discussions that we have to be having.
My name is Jamie D'Amato, and I'm the author of the upcoming gay vampire rom-com, The Good Vampire's Guide to Blood and Boyfriends. My favorite banned book, and one of my favorite books of all time, is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. It follows the story of a 17-year-old girl in 1954 Chinatown discovering her sexuality and falling in love with another girl. For me, books like this are so important because they show that queer people exist across timelines, across cultures, even in 1954 Chinatown, for example, and that they can have happy endings and that they can have love. A few school districts this book has been banned at in Florida are Clay County, Escambia County, Flagler School, Valdosta County, in North Carolina, Pender County, in South Carolina, Beaufort County, and Horry County, in Texas, Conroe School District, Frisco School District, Keller School District, in Utah, Granite School District, Wisconsin, Somerset School District. This book has been banned a lot. This is a young adult book written and designed for teens. It is about love and perseverance, and that is a message I do not think should be banned.
My name is Hazel McBride, and I am the author of this book, A Fate Forged in Fire, and I want to talk about one of my favourite books that had a significant impact on me as a young teenager that has been banned in the district Clay by a group of individuals, and that is Frostbite by Rochelle Mead. Now, this book is part of the wider Vampire Academy series. I'm not entirely sure why it was banned. It could be the vampires, it could be the witchcraft, it could be the discussions of young romance and young love, none of which I feel is inappropriate for a young adult book. There is nothing graphic described or depicted within it. But for me, as a young woman growing up, this is the first series that I read about a very strong female protagonist, where Rose, the female protagonist, was unapologetically herself. She was strong, she was fierce, she got to be herself. She didn't conform to those feminine ideals of being dainty or being small, you know, making herself small for others. That didn't exist in Rose's brain, and I really connected to that, and it took me a very long time of reading so many other books to try and find other characters like her that I connected with. And This series really taught me that as a woman, it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be loud. It's okay to take up space, to want to be strong. That's all right. And I think it's so important that young people find protagonists that they connect with in stories and make them feel like it's okay to be themselves. So for that reason, I believe that Frostbite and the wider Vampire Academy series should remain on shelves.
Hello, I'm AJ Vrana. I'm a dark fantasy author based in Canada, and this is my partner Brenton, who's from Idaho. So he is the obligatory American in this video. So we're here to talk about our favorite banned book, which is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So this book is for sure banned in one district in Texas for it dealing with racism, climate change, and having sexual content. But we think it's a really important text that should not be banned anywhere. So this is a dystopian science fiction novel that was published in 1993, and the majority of the book takes place between 2024 and 2027, so it's kind of our era, and it's quite prophetic, but it also reflects a lot of the things that were going on in society in the 90s that Octavia Butler noticed. The book follows a Black teenager living in California. Her name's Lauren, and she lives behind a gated community in a society that has otherwise broken down. So there's immense wealth disparity, there's climate change wreaking havoc, there's also this drug that makes people pyromaniacs, and they want to set everything on fire. So it's not a fun time. But this community that Lauren lives in, even though they're better off than everyone else, they're still not doing great. There's limited resources, and eventually it becomes clear to Lauren that she is not going to see society improve, so she leaves this community, which is destroyed, to find work elsewhere. We think this is a really important book that should be standard reading in every curriculum, and it absolutely should not be banned.
A few of the things that are really important about this book are the ways that, although things feel in the book feel very prescient, they feel very present to us right now as these parts of our lives, they were also very much a part of Butler's life and her world. The phrase of "Make America Great Again" has famously now been the slogan for Donald Trump's campaign and his entire presidency. But that slogan was actually starting to make the rounds in the 80s and 90s with some of the presidential campaigns of Butler's time. She's seeing this and also some of the racial tensions of the time. In the early 90s, you have the police beating of Rodney King, you have the following the LA uprising, and all the protests against police brutality, which again feel very present, as well as discussions of climate change, which Butler had been keyed into and engaging with since the 80s as well. And so a lot of this feels, for Butler, it is very much her life and what she's looking at, and she's projecting it into our present life now, and it is not so much an imagined different America, it is the same one that she was living in. It is just sort of working through the tensions that are there. She's looking forward into the sort of dystopic future while also diagnosing her own present, and it is the present whose structures we are still living with today. These are difficult themes, like they are not easy to get through, but the book is written wonderfully, and it actually centers a protagonist who herself is not perfect, like who is flawed. And the imagined religion of Earthseed that she kind of comes up with centers that problem of imperfection. One of the central themes and recurring phrases of Earthseed that comes around is, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And that is not spoken from a position of just pure authority on things, or nor is it a singular idea, because throughout the book you have snippets of her, idea of Earthseed. And one chapter opens with, embrace diversity, unite or be divided, robbed, ruled, and killed by those who see you as prey. Embrace diversity or be destroyed. So she sees change and an embracing of change in the other and coming together with what each person brings as something vital. And I think all of that together makes it a book that not only is very valuable for understanding Butler's time, but for still grappling with a lot of the problems we have today.
Also, just a quick shout out, this is another book by Octavia Butler called Kindred. And this book has actually been banned in prisons. This particular edition was done by Satisfiction Book Box, and they are a Black-owned subscription box. They make lovely special editions, so go look them up, please.
Hi there, my name is Taylor Grothe, and I am the author of Hollow, which comes out from Peachtree Teen in September of 2025. And this is my favorite banned book, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. It was banned in Florida. This book needs to stay on shelves. It inspired all of my dark academia writing. It is also a chilling tale of abuse of power and is so salient right now.
Hi there, I'm Lacey N Dunham, author of The Bells, a debut novel forthcoming from Simon & Schuster Atria this fall. And the banned book I recommend is Toni Morrison's Beloved, which has been banned from libraries in the states of Colorado, Florida, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. It won the Pulitzer Prize in fiction, and it's an exquisite piece of contemporary American literary Gothic writing that asks difficult and challenging questions are connected to and about the American system of slavery. At the center of the novel is Setha, who has to make a difficult choice, whether or not to allow her children to be sold into chattel slavery or whether to kill them. This novel is certainly difficult and challenging to read in that it tears at one's heart and asks questions about a painful period in American history that we still have not fully reconciled with and for which we have yet to provide reparations. But for all of these reasons, it belongs on bookshelves.
Hello, my name is Sylvester Barzey. I am a horror and fantasy author, specifically of Camp Lanier, a YA horror that explores the racist history of Lake Lanier and Forsyth County, Georgia, as well as Dead Soil, a pirate horror where the zombie apocalypse is caused by the transatlantic slave trade. And I am here to talk to you about my favorite book that is banned in Florida, which is wild. I feel like when someone is going out their way to ban something and just trying to keep knowledge from you, that's when you should probably seek it out the most. I feel like they're just trying to hide something from you. And a #1 book that has pulled the curtain, let you take a good look into history, was the 1619 Project. So this book is specifically being banned in Clay County, Florida. Explains to you the missing gaps in history. Like, it definitely explains to you that Black people were here a lot longer than society and the government would like you to believe. When they touch upon things like the Revolutionary War, when you learn about it in school, in history class, you never really learn like what the enslaved community and what Black people were doing. The 1619 Project acknowledged the fact that the Revolutionary War was really starting because the British were contemplating emancipating all the slaves. A lot of slaves joined the British Army looking for their freedom. Yeah, that's a lot of things that are left out. Just check out the 1619 Project, get your hands on it, dive into American history that's unwhitewashed. Tell those book banners go themselves.
Hi, I'm Leann Schwartz, author of the young adult fantasies A Prayer for Vengeance and To a Darker Shore, as well as the adult rom-com, which is about book bans, My Kind of Trouble, and in which I got to share some of my favorite real-world banned books. And one of my very, very favorite, unfortunately banned books is The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonora Reyes. This book received a ton of right-wing hate when it came out. In one specific incident in Laurel, Montana, where it was purchased, it was challenged and banned before it ever made it to shelves. I believe it's been kept off of many more shelves because of that targeting. But librarians who are professionally trained to the graduate level to identify developmentally appropriate quality literature for young readers have lavished this book with praise. You can see all of its many awards and honors. It was a National Book Award finalist. It was a William C. Morris finalist. It won a Lambda Literary Award. An incredible book, judged by the people whose jobs it is to know versus people who simply want to erase anything queer. This is the story of an indigenous Mexican-American teenage girl who, after being outed at her last school, starts at a new Catholic school determined to fit in and fly under the radar and also watch out for her little brother Caesar, who's dealing with a lot of his own issues. The main character, Yami, is such a stellar heroine. She's so loving. She's so in need of love. You just hurt for her and root for her. It's so authentic to the real teen experience. The romance is just super sweet. Just kids still figuring themselves out. But it deals with so many incredibly important issues for readers in developmentally appropriate ways, like the complexities and even dangers of coming out, mental health struggles, balancing queerness with your religion in a really personal way, classism, racism, complex family dynamics, and all kinds of issues that readers can relate to and that readers have related to where they've been allowed access to this book in libraries. I believe this book deserves to be on shelves and that readers deserve to have access to it on their shelves because readers deserve to see themselves reflected in the books in their libraries. And so many can relate to Yami for so many different ways, and other readers deserve to get to know her and to get to know the issues that this book explores so beautifully. And I'm so excited because we're getting a sequel, The Golden Boy's Guide to Bipolar, this year, centered on her brother. I am very hopeful that we can all fight together to make sure that we maintain access to all of Sonora's YAs and all of the incredible books that are unfortunately being targeted with these harmful bans.
I'm Steph Cherrywell, they, them. I'm the author of the upcoming middle grade novels Unboxing Libby and The Ink Witch. And I'm going to tell you about one of my favorite banned or challenged books, The Adventures of Captain Underpants by Dave Pilkey. This book was first published in 1997, and the series remains extremely popular to this day, especially counting the spin-off graphic novel, Dog Man, which is even more of a hit. Captain Underpants is the story of George Beard and Harold Hutchins, two elementary school cartoonists and pranksters who run afoul of the authoritarian Principal Krupp. George and Harold hypnotize their principal into believing that he is a superhero called Captain Underpants, and every time he hears fingers snapping, he strips down to his undies and runs off to fight crime, and it turns out he's pretty good at it. According to West Virginia's Marshall University, this series has a long history of bans and challenges over the last few decades, and looking back from today, when 90% of our bans and challenges are based on either racism or queerphobia, some of the reasons why seem almost quaint. One is offensive language, and I hope that the people complaining had to explain what language they were offended by, because it couldn't have been anything other than words like tinkle trousers or poopy pants. Another phrase that came up was unsuited to age group, and buddy, there is no book that is more suited to its age group than this one. Dave Pilkey knew exactly what demographic he was aiming for, and he hit it dead on, which is why this book, which is a replacement of a replacement copy, is already starting to fall apart, as always happens with the library's copies. There were also some challenges eventually driven by homophobia, because the last book in the series revealed that Harold is gay. One thing that came up over and over was that the series encourages disruptive behavior and disobedience to authority, which, yeah, if you take it literally, then especially early in the series, George and Harold are a couple of little stinkers. The moral of the series isn't that kids should literally pour soap into the marching band's musical instruments so they will blow bubbles. It's about trying new things and doing wild experiments. One of the most consistent messages Dave Pilkey has for kids is that stories and comics and art aren't just something you consume. There's something you can create. Pilkey wants his audience to know that kids can be artists too, that just like George and Harold, they can pick up a pen and create something that will change the world. Or at least give someone a good laugh. And that's why Captain Underpants deserves a place on the shelf.
Hi, I'm Katherine Grant, a historical romance author, and I want to share with you why Jodi Picoult's books were so transformative to me as a high schooler. I lived in Warsaw, Poland as a high schooler, and although the American school library did have academic books and books you might read in English class, I turned to the American bookstore at the mall for most of my leisure reading, and that was a very limited bookshelf, and one of the authors I could reliably count on being on that bookshelf was Jodi Picoult. And so I read pretty much everything of hers that I could get my hands on. Jodi Picoult's great gift is writing about very complex issues and very complex stories from an incredibly empathetic standpoint. You see the stories unfold through multiple point of view characters. But not only are you getting the story and the narrative through these different points of view, each point of view character also goes on an emotional journey of their own. So you see how they change from the beginning to the end. From the book, you learn empathy by being in these different heads and seeing how two different parents can have two different sides to the story of a divorce, or how two different high schoolers can experience the same event differently. But you also learn how empathy can deepen and broaden someone's experience, because you see each point of view character learning something new by the end of the book about their own emotional landscape and about their own relationships. It's because of reading Jodi Picoult's books that I decided I wanted to study creative writing in college. I'm pretty sure I cited her in all of my college applications, and I certainly talked about her when I arrived on campus at Northwestern University to begin my creative writing studies. I now write historical romances, which are a different genre than Jodi, but I think her writing is still in my writing DNA as I try to embrace multiple perspectives, explore complex issues with an emotional and empathetic point of view. When I hear that her books are banned from high schools across America, and in fact among the top banned books, I feel real sadness, because I know what an inspiration she was for me and how much she has to do with me having the career that I have now. And I worry about the little high schooler out there right now who is looking for inspiration and who won't be able to pick up a Jodi Picoult book because someone was, I don't know, scared of something that was written in a book. I urge everyone to read the books empathetically and think about what you're learning instead of what you're scared of before deciding to ban a book.
Hi, my name is Becca Coffindaffer. I am the author of The Crown Chasers duology and the upcoming book, The Bloody and the Damned. And I am so honored to be a part of this project and to get to tell you about one of my favorite banned or challenged books, which is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. This is a book that has been banned or challenged in, I believe, Tennessee, Texas, and multiple places in Florida. It is about Darius, who's an Iranian-American teen who doesn't really feel like he fits in anywhere. He loves Star Trek, which same. He kind of has a life-changing trip when he goes with his family on his first ever visit to Iran to stay with his grandparents. I don't even know where to begin as far as trying to pin down why it is so important for this book to be in schools and in libraries and in bookstores, anywhere readers are, because Darius himself is so layered in what he's dealing with that it is easy to connect with him and to find a sense of understanding, hope, and joy in his story. He is Iranian American, he is gay, he is dealing with clinical depression, he has a fractured relationship with his father, which is such a central part of this story and is so important. Honestly, brought me to tears. Like, I don't cry a lot at books. This book moves me to tears. I think so many teens would find themselves in Darius and find themselves in his struggles of trying to figure out where he belongs, who are his people, you know, what does it mean to be himself in this world, and how does he connect better with parents and with his elders and those who came before him. So I absolutely want Darius the Great on everybody's bookshelves. It's on my bookshelf, obviously, but I want it everywhere because I think that this book means a lot to anybody who picks it up.
Hi, I'm William Alexander. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, and I'm here to talk about comics. I don't write comics, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. Some of my favorite graphic novels have been banned, forcibly removed from shelves in classrooms and libraries. Books like Mouse, like March, Genderqueer, Witch Boy. There is a long history of banning comics in the United States under the absurd and paradoxical justification that they are silly, meaningless, frivolous, juvenile, and suitable only for children, and that they are also somehow dangerously unsuitable for children. Both at once. Comics have been burned, banned, and gently, condescendingly discouraged as a kind of reading that doesn't really count. Comic books do count as books. They can give us powerful glimpses of historical fact. They can expand through fantasy, our understanding of ourselves and our world. They can do both at once. And they can offer new ways of seeing a story that we thought we already knew, like this adaptation of Anne Frank's diary. If you were to go to central Berlin in Germany, you might find a monument to all of the books that the Nazis burned. Here is an illustration of the burning. That monument is an underground chamber of empty bookshelves, visible through a pane of glass, right in the middle of a huge cobblestone square. It lights up at night, haunted and haunting. The monument also includes a plaque with a quote from Heinrich Heine, a German and Jewish playwright and poet. The quote reads, "This was a prologue. Wherever books burn, people will also burn." It says that in German, but that's the translation. His books were burned on that spot in 1933. Medical research from the Institute for the Science of Sexuality, which was a groundbreaking source of support for queer and transgender people, also burned on that spot in 1933. Nazis don't like queer books. They don't like black books. They don't like books about disability, books about immigration. They really don't like any books that portray any other category of people as people. Those who don't read history are doomed to repeat it, but also those who don't want you to read history intend to repeat it. The Nazi T4 program murdered hundreds of thousands of kids with disabilities. Kids with autism, kids who needed glasses, kids with hearing loss. An executive order issued by the White House on February 13th, 2025, described the mere existence of kids with disabilities as, quote, a dire threat to the American people and our way of life. Several executive orders have described the mere existence of trans kids as, quote, anti-American and a stain on our nation's history. We've heard these arguments before, insisting that certain kinds of stories, that certain kinds of protagonists are not permitted to exist on library shelves is prologue and practice for limiting the kinds of people who are allowed to exist at all. Wherever books burn, people will also burn. So read those books. Read books, fight Nazis. Celebrate everyone's right to read widely and wildly, to see themselves and their neighbors and our shared histories in these pages and panels. Thank you for your voices. Thanks for listening to mine.
And you are back to me. A huge thank you to everybody who participated, but I also need to shout out Adib Karam at Authors Against Book Banning, who helped put the word out about this project and helped get me in touch with several of these authors who pitched in today. And thank you to author Rebecca Coffindaffer for putting me in touch with Adib and Authors Against Book Banning. You can check out Authors Against Book Banning by clicking some links down below. I do want to make this into a series, so if you are an author who wants to chime in on this issue, please email me at readswithrachel@gmail.com. Thank you again to everybody who contributed, and thank you to everybody who's watching this. Please get involved in your local communities in the fight against censorship. Arm yourselves with knowledge and support each other. If you made it this far, let me know what your favorite challenged or banned book is in the comments below. And if you don't know if some of your favorites have been challenged or banned, there are resources down below from both Florida Freedom to Read Project and PEN America that list censorship attempts and successes. All of that is down below. Thank you so much to everybody again, and I will see you next time. Bye.